Hey makers, listen up. I've had quite a few people in the last week alone tell me that they're writing off certain companies because their fragrance oils don't work for them. It may not be the fragrance oil company itself that's garbage. It may just be a fragrance oil itself that's not as good. And let me explain why. When you are putting chemicals together, you're going to have a chemical reaction. Sometimes there's not as much of a reaction that's apparent. Sometimes there's more a drastic reaction. Things like ricing, acceleration, discoloration do not necessarily mean a fragrance oil company is bad, but that a fragrance oil itself needs a little extra work. And keep in mind, not all fragrance oils are soap safe. You really have to do your research, and this is where you become your own best advocate. I have purchased fragrance oils from every reputable company that I've heard of, and I know there's more out there. Brambleberry, Nurture Soap, Nature's Garden, Midwest Fragrance Company, Wholesale Supplies Plus. It doesn't matter where. I've had good experiences with fragrance oils from each of those companies and bad experiences with each of those companies. And I haven't written any of those companies off simply because I had a bad experience with one or two of their fragrance oils. As you progress as a maker, you kind of get to know what fragrance oils do what. Across the board, coffee fragrance oils tend to accelerate and kind of morph scent with cold process soap. Citrus oils such as orange or tangerine tend to slow things down. The combination Love Spell, Victoria's Secret, that one is so highly prized. People love that scent. That one is notorious for ashing and for slowing down trace. It becomes almost like water as soon as you add it to the soap. Ones that smell like rain or grass tend to rice. I don't know what it is. Like, why are you ricing? But they do. So let me just encourage you to keep notes of each and every batch you make. Write it in a notebook. Even if you don't want to keep the full recipe and everything, write down the fragrance oil and how it behaved. That way you can go back in the future and say, hey, I'm not going to use this one, or hey, I need soap a little cooler with this one. This one really accelerated when I soaped a little warmer. Make sure you are doing your homework before you purchase a fragrance oil, and make sure you read the reviews from other makers. You ask in soap groups how the fragrance oil went for them. Sometimes a maker has a bad experience, sometimes they have a good experience, sometimes the formulation of the fragrance oil is changed and you're not aware of it, so maybe it behaves better than it used to. But when I first started, I was really certain that there were certain companies that were just terrible because I had bad experiences with select fragrance oils. But it wasn't the company itself. It was my inexperience at the time to know that certain fragrance oils just don't behave very well. And it's up to you as a maker. Do you want to work with that difficulty, or do you want to just avoid it and move on to a different fragrance oil because that one's just not for you? Anything with vanillin in it is going to turn your soap brown. That's one thing a new maker may or may not know, and they may be quite surprised and disappointed when their soap turns brown. But that's one of the things you learn with time. So the things to look for when purchasing a new fragrance oil: look for the vanillin content. Any reputable company is going to have the percentage rate of vanillin. If it's over, say, 3 or 4%, it's going to greatly discolor your soap. And you don't have to avoid that fragrance oil. You can add that portion of the design into your creativity. What do you want that's a darker kind of hue? Maybe you could use a navy blue or a red or something that's not going to be as noticeable when it gets darker. If it says it rices, well, maybe it's time to experiment with a really small batch and see just how bad it rices before making a big 5-pound slab, 10-pound slab of soap. Most ricing can be blended out with the stick blender, so it's not a hopeless case. If you really like a fragrance oil and it rices, sometimes it can be workable. Just a little tidbit for you. I hope this has been helpful.